I have to tell you something. So ever since I started doing YouTube, many of my friends and students have texted me that this is something good that I am doing. And you know what? I have more than 350 painting lessons in Skillshare. And in the last few days, 2 of my students texted me that my classes in Skillshare are like really good. Okay, I am not boasting here. That is not my intention. I'm just telling you what happened. So they told me that my classes are really good, the way I explain, and that they literally love every video of mine. And they said that if I had posted those paintings into YouTube since the beginning of whenever I started doing this, then I would have got like 1 million subscribers by now. Okay, so I know that that's like a bit of overachievement, and I don't think so. But it got me thinking that, you know, I should have done this from before. And I don't know why, but I didn't think of putting paintings, I mean my good paintings, the whole video lesson into YouTube before. But now, after I've started doing this and after I've gotten a lot of feedback from friends and family and you, of course, I've decided some things. And it is basically to close down my Patreon. I know most people think of diversifying their channels and building more and more income sources. And I'm thinking of shutting it down. Well, actually not thinking, I've already done it. The reason is, so I have like more than 100, not even 100, I think more than 200 paintings in Patreon as well. And it's always been really good for me. Good as in not up to my expectations, but it always had like 15 to 20 people and sometimes even less. But now I realized that it was not worth the effort, I only used to give just 4 paintings a month in Patreon, sometimes 3, and there were months that I didn't give anything, but I'll just explain that. So, but now that I've decided to move to sketchbooks, I just think that, those process paintings or those paintings are for me, are for my learnings, and I want to do more of YouTube. I want to do more of Skillshare classes, so then Patreon is not my cup of tea, because I just don't want to waste my time just for that. My husband did offer for editing Patreon videos. He said that it's just 4 videos up. He'll edit it for me. But then I don't want him to. It's just, I could put those videos into YouTube. That was my thinking. And Patreon has always been good for me, It's been like an alternative income source. As in, whenever we needed some extra bucks, like, an emergency fund, it's been always there. Like, for example, we got a flat tire, or I needed to buy some extra art supplies because I'm going to India, or maybe I needed to get something for the studio. Then I would just go over to Patreon and there would be like a $200 or $100 lying in there. Because the money that I got from Patreon, I never used to take it out on a monthly basis. I just used to keep it inside of Patreon. And whenever I needed it, I used to go and withdraw that money. So it was always good whenever I needed extra few bucks from what I was earning from Skillshare and my regular employment income. But now I know that I'll be closing that down. And I think it's okay because it's not all about money, right? I want to be able to provide for people here, and many people were not able to afford Patreon along with Skillshare. I'll still be doing Skillshare, but I thought that those videos that I was supposed to be putting to Patreon, I'll put that into YouTube. Yes, YouTube. So that was literally what I did today. That is, send an email over to my Patreons that I'm closing it down. I talked to my husband about it. He didn't have much of a response to give me. He said it's my choice. So yeah, I decided to go forward with it. The main reason is people are paying me inside of Patreon, and if I can't put in my 100% to give something, then it's not worth it. It's not worth them paying me for something that I cannot even put my 100% in it. So that's the reason I thought that, it's time to shut it down. Because if I can't put my 100%, then why would they have to pay me? So because right now, my complete focus is on YouTube. I would actually say it's an 80-20 rule in my life. So 80% focus on YouTube and 20% on Skillshare. But this is how I decided my life in 2023 has to be. And like I said, there were months that I didn't have any video being added to Patreon. What I did was to just give them the access to my Skillshare classes. But the justification for me at that point of time was that they're paying me for the videos that's already there in Patreon because that's not there anywhere. So it was access to all of those videos, which was more than 100 at that point of time. I had stopped putting in additional videos. So that was my justification. But now I am going to be putting those videos into YouTube. So there's no way I can make people pay for content that's going to be available for free. And that's the reason that I am closing it down. So this painting is one of my favorites, and this was there in Patreon, and I'd like to start my tutorial in YouTube with this one first, mainly because it is my favorite one. I actually painted this for one of my SKILLSHARE classes, which was exploring the universe with watercolors, but I didn't add it to my SKILLSHARE for some reason, and now I'd like to put it to YouTube. So this one, the tutorial and everything is what was there already in Patreon, and I've just added it to this video here. So let me tell you some things. It just assumes that you know the basic watercolor techniques and you know the things like wet on wet, wet on dry, etc. And I'm talking while painting in this video, so you'll get a glimpse of what I do when I'm teaching. But I have to tell you, this is like 1 or 2 years before, in fact. So I've gotten so much better in the way I teach and in the way that I explain. It's just a glimpse. So here you go. This is the painting that we're going to be doing. Hello guys, so I have my RHase paper here, taped on all the 4 edges, and today we're going to be painting a nice galaxy. So it's going to be a spiral galaxy. So let us see. There's not going to be much of a pencil sketch. I'm just going to outline the shape of the galaxy so that it'll help me when I'm doing the sketch. So like that. Like that. And then maybe another one. So something simple like this. That's a really bad sketch, but that's alright, we'll correct it when we're painting. So this is how it is going to be. So let us start. We obviously need to start with the wet on wet technique. So I'm going to take my Escoda flat brush and I'm going to apply water. So with galaxy paintings, that is the most important thing, wet on wet. And we're going to be working on wet on wet for the whole paper. So let's apply water. I have applied water, you can see, for the whole of my paper. And as I always say, applying the water is the most important part when you're working with the wet on wet technique. So let it flow, apply it evenly such that there is no large blobs. So this is why I'm moving my brush on my paper all around so that every surface of my paper has even amount of water. I don't want to form any large pools, large blobs or excessive amount of water on my paper. So we will go through the paper both in horizontal and vertical directions. There. So now we have a nice amount of water on our paper, and we can actually wipe out any excess water around the edges. So here I have my tissue and I'm gonna dab off excess water from just on top of my tape, not my paper. So this will help to keep your tape intact. Otherwise, if your tape is clumsy, it might come off with all the water that you allowed to flow on top of it. So that is what we need to prevent. So there, just going on top of it again in case I accidentally touch the paper. Don't think so. So now we have enough water on the paper and we're going to start painting. So for that, let us see which brush I want. A nice medium size brush. So size 8. That's good. So I'm gonna go with my size 8 brush. So here, starting with my size 8. And I'm gonna start with a nice yellow shade. There. I'm gonna start with a nice yellow shade in the center. Then we'll move towards the outer areas. So for the outer areas, I'm gonna take alizarin crimson. So the yellow that I used is PY150 or yellow lake or transparent yellow, Indian yellow, many names. So then a bit of alizarin crimson, and you can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to get like a nice spiral shape with my brush. So just swivel around and make that nice shape. So this one, if you have a nice brush control, it would be really helpful. But don't worry if you don't have one, you can practice and you'll be able to achieve this. Then the next color I have taken is Queen Gold. So Queen Gold is a mixture of PR122 I think and pigment yellow 150. So I'm just applying it alongside the red shade that we applied. So there, now we have a nice beautiful spiral already in the center. So before the rest of it dries, we have to work very quickly, very quickly. So the next color I'm gonna take, no, not that, I want phthalo blue. So I think that's phthalo blue. You can check. I have a spray paper here. There, that's phthalo blue. So using phthalo blue, I'm gonna paint the rest. So there. And we can keep doing this spiral kind of motion and you can see what I have done. So I've made it a spiral stretching out in different directions. We can have another one here and maybe another one final over here. So these are going to be the main branches of my spiral. So our paper is drying, so we have to work quickly now. It's almost drying towards the outside. So let us work. I'm going to pick up indigo and I'm going to apply it. So this is indigo and I'm going to apply it along the other white areas outside of the spiral. That is in between the spiral areas where we applied. So all the white spaces, I'm gonna fill it up with indigo. So take up nice dark tone of indigo and fill it up. And the rest of the sky as well. So we will have to be making it as dark as possible. We will use black on the top later on, but for now let us finish adding the indigo so that our paint doesn't dry. I mean, not the paint, our paper, it's already drying. You can already sense it drying, so we have to work faster at this point. And so because we applied indigo, the blue, the phthalo blue that we applied is fading because it doesn't have a huge contrast, but that's fine. We will just in a moment add a nice contrast to our phthalo blue. We will use white for that. You can either use white watercolors or you can use gouache. It's according to your wish. You can use whichever. Let me just fill up the area in between. Okay, so I've applied the paint, but now we need to add the bigger contrast and make sure everything is black towards the outside and lighter towards the inside. So you can see this paint spreading away from the corners, so we can add more paint on top of it. There. But you can already see the spiral coming alive, isn't it? So now what we will do is we will use our white watercolors. So I usually fill my white watercolors in this one. Let me just add it. So I use white gouache. So I have Winsor & Newton white gouache here. This is zinc white. This is not the usual titanium white that I use. My titanium white is over. It's almost finished. So I kind of try to save it for my important professional works. That's why. So now we have the white. So we're gonna use our white paint and we'll start with the center. So the center is already almost dried. That's all right. So then we'll move outside then maybe. So once you touch your brush to the water, you can see that it already starts mixing with the blue. That's all right. So we're going to be doing is we're going to apply this white tone to the legs of our spiral. So that would give it the bright shade. But it will eventually mix with the blue, so we don't have to worry about it. But this is the point of using this Arches paper, because it stays wet for a longer duration of time. So if my paper was not still wet, this would have formed into a huge it would have not given me that nice wet on wet effect that I'm seeing now. It's already dried, even though if it's Arches you can see that. So just because it is Arches, we're getting a bit more control into what we're doing. But if it was not Arches, we wouldn't have got it at all. So trying to get a bit control on my painting. So here it's almost dried. Whoops. If you observed a shake right now, I just hit my head on the camera above. Anyway, okay. Okay, that looks really nice now, right? So let us make the center a bit more nice. So I'm just gonna switch to my smaller brush now. So this is my size 4 brush. This is the Aquario series from Escoda. So we applied a bit of paint in the center. I mean the white paint, but it's got dark edges. So we're gonna solve that. So I've taken my Indian yellow and I've applied it again. And then we're gonna apply with the same shades that we used before. So this is alizarin crimson, and I'm going around so you can see, because my paper has dried, I'm getting these dark edges, but we can correct that. So we're gonna go with the other shades that we used. That was Indian yellow and Indian gold. So here I'm applying Indian gold, going above on the top with Indian gold, and then I've just dipped my brush in water. I'm gonna blend it. So when I blend it, I won't get any dark edges. All my dark edges would just blend in, and because I'm not taking any paint, I would still get those tiny white spaces that I want. And you can also see that your Indian yellow is kind of, and the gold also is kind of mixing with the blue to give a nice green tint at that place, which is exactly what we want. So there, it's okay to have that unevenness in the center because this is the galaxy. I mean, it's bound to have that unevenness in the center. It doesn't need to be perfect. But we're just trying to avoid any dark edges, that's all. Maybe we can apply a bit of red at certain places. So I'm just trying to ease all the spirals and trying to make them correct there. And now maybe you can get back to the white, and nope, that's too much, that's too much. So pick it up with your brush, spread it around there, and then I just need a speck at the center, and then I'm gonna place some along the red lines. So there is the end of the spiral there too, and towards here as well. Okay, so now we've got the nice dark shade that the contrast, but we need to darken our indigo. So we're gonna go with our indigo again. Okay, too small brush. I need to take my larger brush. And my larger brush and indigo there. So I'm applying on the top again. So many of your areas might have still dried, but once you apply on the top again, it will go. Then you can actually also use Payne's gray or neutral tint, so it's like a darker shade. So I'm just taking indigo and applying towards the areas that we had applied earlier, just to make it a bit more darker, because I want the outside areas to be as dark as possible. So you can see it's still lighter, and to darken it you can either use Payne's Gray, neutral tint, or indigo. So the dark, you can also use black, but I rarely use black in my paintings. I don't know, I just like to follow the rule of professional artists where they say that don't use black. I don't know why they say that, but yeah, they do say that don't use black in your paintings. So I try to avoid that always. So that's why I rarely use black in my paintings. Okay, these areas have started to dry so much that I'm having to reapply the whole of my paint. So if I just apply and leave it there, I'll get a dark edge here. So which is why I have to finish the entire part and apply the paint again, and I might have to rerun the other colors on the top. Okay, so now we've painted the colors, repeat again. So I'm taking neutral tint now, also Payne's Gray, trying to make it as dark as possible. So applying the darker tones. Okay, I have applied now. Now I have to just run my brush over these so that I don't get any dark edges. Around that, the indigo that we applied is still wet, so our paints will take care of that. Just running around so you can see I've taken out the dark edge there. Now here, so you can see that the white that we applied blends together nicely. So this is exactly what I wanted. There, so now we're getting a nice white, right? So in areas that where your indigo is seeping in, you can add more white. And if you're missing indigo, you can add more of indigo as well. So because you're repeatedly applying paint to those areas again and again, those areas will stay wet. So we just applied paints to these areas, so it's still wet. So the key thing with all of these is just to make sure that you keep applying the paint on it. And when you do that, you're making sure that your paper stays wet. So here, have my paint. So I'm just making sure that my whole thing stays wet, and we moved towards the inside. So now we have to complete the inside circle as well, because otherwise it's just going to merge and form something else. So I'm washing my brush after each stroke because the paint is just gonna spread, and we don't want the whole thing to spread and create a huge mass. So which is why we're trying to do it this way. So I've taken a bit more red or alizarin crimson and I'm applying it, and I can see that this one is still not mixed nicely. There. So now let's take more of indigo Payne's grey and try to apply it around it. I want to make it more dark on the top. It doesn't seem to be more dark. So when you're reapplying the paint, make sure that your brush has very little water, because we don't want to introduce any more water into our paper. So remember the theory of not introducing any more water. This is because if you introduce any more water onto your paper, it's just going to create blooms. So we don't want any blooms. So we did the outer circle first. So we just need to add a bit more stuff into the inner circle to get a nice spiral effect. So the outside part of our spiral is complete, but we need to do that inside part. So for that, I've switched to my smaller size brush and I'm taking up indigo, and I have very little water on my brush because I just used a tissue to wipe off the water. And we're going to, so we have just wet these regions, so we're going to be applying the indigo paint, but remember to apply it such that you are able to distinguish only in certain areas, because we don't want it to be having a huge effect inside our galaxy. So just to get some of the lines distinct. So here you can see it's mixing with my white. So I'm done with indigo. I'm going to take my neutral tint, which is more like a black shade. It's still not black, it's neutral tint, and I'm going to apply it on top of the indigo. So this will prevent my yellows from making any red, yellows from making any green mixing with the indigo. Why did I say red? Okay, not huge, just at random places. Okay, so there I need to blend these areas because it's got a dark edge. And I'm gonna run over these. So you can see not the whole thing is now, only the few parts of the dark sky can be seen through our galaxy. That's what we're trying to get. Okay, so now this looks better, right? I'm gonna add a bit more black towards the edges. Make sure they are black. Okay, I think that's enough. So this already now looks beautiful, right? So now we have to wait for the whole thing to dry so that we can add in the stars. Isn't that looking beautiful already? Let me show it to you in a different angle so you can see this angle here, how our spiral galaxy is looking beautiful. Isn't that gorgeous? anyway, so now we have to wait for this to dry. I'm gonna wait for this to dry manually because I don't want to use any heater, because if I use a heater or something on this, it can dry unevenly. So I'm just gonna wait. Our galaxy has now dried, so we can add in our stars, and I have my white gouache here. So for doing the splattering method, remember to take off everything from your table which you don't want to ruin, otherwise you end up with splatters all over. So I just want to show you. So you can see this is my artificial plant that I keep on my table as a prop, and it's all covered in splatters. So anyway, so take off everything. I've even closed my palette, you can see that, because I don't want white splatters inside of my palette. Outside on the top is fine. So I'm gonna be using my medium small size brush. So this is my size 4 brush, and I'm gonna dip my brush in water and load my brush with white paint. So loading the whole of my brush with nice white paint. So a nice consistency of white paint. And here I'm going to use the 2 brush method. So I'm going to start the splatters. So you can see it's going all over, but we want the splatters to be focused towards the center and less towards the outside. So when you're moving towards the outside, just lesser, but yes, there will be some, but more towards the center. So now let's move towards the center, and for adding the splatters we need to focus that there's more splatters towards the spiral lamp. So turn your brush in that direction and do this. So you can see we're having that splatters here. Don't even accidentally let go of your brush. It might fall onto the paper and ruin your existing painting. So don't. Just be careful. Hold your arm steady and hold the brush carefully. This has happened to me many times, that's why I'm saying this. Okay, time to pick up more. So load your brush again, hold it steady. Oops, see? So even don't do it closer because you might end up touching the paper. Okay, we don't want any more splatters on the outside, so I'm going to cover it up, otherwise we'll end up with splatters, more splatters on the outside. So here are 2 tissues. This one's like a very old tissue on my table there. So load up our brush again, hold it. So I think all the water from my brush is gone, so I just dipped my brush in water Add a little, don't dip it too much because we don't want a lot of water. Pick up paint again, white, and start adding. Okay, now I want more. That should do. See my hands. It's beauty of painting. Okay, so we have more of those splatters. So make sure to clean your brush, otherwise it's going to end up with all of these splatters. Now we have our beautiful galaxy, and I've cleaned my brushes. There. So let us remove the tape. I just hope the tape has hold well and the corners are better. If not, we always know what to do with the corners. We can just apply some white gouache and clear it up, right? Yep, the corners have hold well, so it's clear. So how does that look, guys? So this is our beautiful spiral galaxy. Isn't it really beautiful? If you painted along with me, then I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching. Do like this video and subscribe to my channel because there's lots of videos coming in for you. See you in my next video.